let's just do quick definitions again. For these purposes, we'll define education as the process of giving intellectual, moral, and social instruction to an individual, or being educated as the state of having received and been positively transformed by intellectual, moral, and social. Sounds like a mouthful, but let's just focus on the key words: intellectual, moral, social, and then positive transformation. Okay, intellectual is about your IQ. Moral and social is about a concept we'll be talking about called EQ, which is social intelligence or emotional intelligence. So if you have wondered why all those guys who are A students in school are not A performers in society or at work, there's your answer.
Interesting.
Then career, we will define it for the purpose of this as a long-term occupation with opportunities for advancement or for progress. And there's obviously a link between education and career. Okay, we'll be talking about that. So IQ versus EQ is a key component of what we're talking about. Let me just leave you with a thought. And that thought is, in education, if you've ever thought about it, in education, actually, the most important thing is IQ. In other words, it's your ability to absorb that which you're being told. So education is about absorbing on your side. But career is about giving. So if education is about receiving information, career is about giving it back. So it's like, you record during school and you play back at work. Okay, that's the first two key links. The second one is that by definition, therefore, education can be very much about me alone, because if I'm intelligent, the lecturer comes in and he speaks to us. My retention can be higher, my absorption can be higher, and I actually get more than everyone else. And there's very little dependence on my relationship with others as we sit in that lecture room. But when it comes to career, the primary role has to do with teamwork, because you're always giving to someone. So even the person you're giving to, or the person you're giving with, if you're part of a team. So as we can see, while IQ is very important at school, EQ, emotional intelligence or social intelligence, is more important at work.
That's a bit worrying, because it's not taught at school whatsoever.
People are starting now to try and integrate some of that back into the school curricula. But that's the reality. And that's why most of our star performers, our A performers at school, don't necessarily become A performers.
Let me ask you, this emotional
intelligence
and social intelligence, is that sort of fall in the same category? But you would learn that inadvertently at school anyway, no? Because you're sort of interacting with people, and maybe there's certain projects you do as a team, which, maybe it's not taught, but isn't that something you end up, and then if it's something you can develop, then maybe you move further with that as you get into the career.
You mean like sports, for example?
Yeah, sports, or
team
like when you have like a lab partners and things like that, when you're doing science projects and whatnot, those things are all sort of preparing you for say, sitting opposite Shanice every day for the last year, this interaction that you have. So it's something that's not taught, but you can learn, and is it up to the individual then, how far they take that?
But then also, what's the challenge with schools that are single sex, for example?
That's a good point. Very
and
good
only
point.
have boys, only have girls.
Yeah. Okay. First question is, do we learn it just by being in the environment? Do I become a better socialite, so to speak? And the unfortunate thing is that for those who are not naturals in that, they can actually get worse, Farid. Okay, so if there's a child who is reclusive, someone who is not naturally extrovert, and then there's the domineering characters, if there isn't formal instruction on that, they will not be aware. First and foremost, they will not understand that there's nothing wrong with being the way they are. It's just that that's a different personality type from others.
And that's the guy.
So the whole issue of defining the personality types, let's not even go into the detail. Let's just say introverts and extroverts.
But isn't
just
that also
knowing that needs to be taught.
But doesn't that also be contributed to by your family, by your parents? I mean, different settings where some kids don't have the ability to express themselves as children. Their parents are very strict.
And also only children.
Oh, yeah, and then also go to a family, only child as well, go to a family where they're encouraged to express themselves. They're not beaten when they're writing walls, because that's kids expressing themselves. And they turn out so different. And even when they go to boarding school or, in a school environment, the two are completely different. Some are actually introverts by virtue of how they've been raised.
Yes.
Is that a contributing factor?
Yes, absolutely. Let's look again at the role of the school vis-a-vis the parents. Let's say hypothetically the father is an engineer, fixes machines when they break down, and that's what he spends his time doing. Mother is, say, a home economics teacher, okay? And then in a different family, there's a totally different mix. Father is a carpenter, mother is a nurse. and so on and so forth. Different crafts, different professions.
Sure.
Okay, so their understanding of the wholesomeness of the extracurricular support that they must give to the children is different, isn't it? Varies from family to family, and that is why it's important for the school to step in and give that. That's why a lot of things have to be integrated into the school curriculum, because the school is charged with that. So the school must actually aim to equip a child or a student, even at university, with all the skills without regard to the specialization of the parents. And that's really what is key here. And so there's absolutely no point in you coming out of college with 10 PhDs and you still chew with your mouth open, and as you speak across the table, you're just showering everyone with the muscles. There's absolutely no point in doing that. There's no point in you coming out and having an excellent specialization in a particular area, and you're always picking your nose in public. And if you are lucky enough to find something in there, you start rolling it.
Oh, gross.
You know what I'm saying? Sorry. But it's important that we look at education in terms of the
Anyone
total.
for breakfast?
We
Right.
need to look at all the aspects of education.
Right.
Right. And we just talked about the fact that there is formal education and that we need to focus on holistic education. So we need to see ourselves as having the intellectual, the moral, and the social skills, because there's no point in being an excellent doctor and you engage in immoral practice using that same skill, or you have the moral rectitude, you understand the right and wrong, but you don't do anything that actually helps society. What I'd like us to focus on right now is this whole thing of someone's doing a job at work and you're doing well. And maybe you've been wondering, is this really what I want to do? And look at one thing that we always do. We promote, when someone is very good at what they do, we promote them because they're good at what they do.
Right.
And when we do that, we have to be very, very careful. Usually we promote them based on the fact that they're good at what they do. And what happens is that we then give them additional responsibility that has less to do with what they do
good at.
and more to do with managing people. And in Africa, it's a very prestigious thing to have a business card that says manager. You have to have that manager thing. You mean you're not a manager yet?
Titles.
How old are
Titles
you?
so important in this country.
And the warning here is that if we promote someone who is good at what they do, we're moving him from the technical level.
Right.
Okay, from being a technician or a technocrat, and we're moving him to the managerial level.
Sure.
And yet, at the managerial level, he requires more managerial skills and less technical skill. So if we're not careful, if we continue doing that, in other words, promoting on the basis of what they're doing now, as opposed to assessing them for the potential of what we're promoting them to. Okay, I'll say that again. If we continue to promote people based on what they're doing now, as opposed to based on their potential for the job to which we're promoting them, okay, which is what we should actually be doing, then what happens is that the organization loses twice. Because
they lose someone who was really good at what they used to do.
You lose a good technocrat and you gain a lousy manager.
Right.
That's the organization losing.
But how about equipping them also to be able to manage, give them
that's
management
what we should
skills?
do. Now, when we do the stop analysis, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask, where are we? Where do we want to be? So the next thing we're going to ask is, where do we want this person to be when we promote them? Then we're going to look at the profile of where they're going. And then we will go to the obstacles and say, what's stopping us? So we'll actually then have a very clear view of the fact that this person might be good where they are, but when they go to the managerial and we start burdening them with responsibility for managing people, this might not be the best utilization of their resources. And even if we can give them the managerial skill, we still need to ask ourselves another question. Is this what they actually enjoy? And that brings me to another point. So let's just nicely wrap up the first point that we've talked about, that when we promote someone based on their current competencies and not based on the requirements for the job to which we're promoting them, we might actually be losing twice. We might be losing a good technocrat and gaining a lousy manager. And I'd like people to think about that.
How about for those who want to be promoted, but it just doesn't seem to be happening?
They need to ask themselves, as we said, why do they want to be promoted? Do they want to be promoted because they need that job title that says manager or not? Because IT companies in Europe and the Americas have gotten this. Most of the guys who develop code, who actually crack the code and develop all this wonderful software are nerds, are guys who, ponytails and, smelly feet and
big
chewing
glasses,
gum with their mouths open, and they don't care, and they just sit there and they crack code. You just give them their keyboard and that's it. And you never come in and tell this guy, I need to promote to manage people. They don't want to manage people. They just enjoy cracking the code. And what happens is that they have a salary scale that just increases and increases, as if to say horizontally. So they just continue doing more and more complex programming without having to deal with people.
Right.
And their career path is, so to speak, horizontal.
But in essence, aren't they their own managers then?
That is it. So you're saying that someone can actually be elevated, and I'm putting the word in quotes, without having to be burdened with the responsibility for managing groups. And that's something that we need to get into. The other thing is we need to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what is it that we actually want to do? So the company must consider what we've just talked about. But as individuals as well, we need to think about that. We need to get to the level of maturity where a company can offer you a promotion and you can say, you know what, down. No, can I get the benefits without having that job description?
Oh.
We need to get to that level of maturity. But if we tie it such that the only way you can get it is if you go up and not...
You mean the benefits like the biggest salary, maybe,
yes.
I don't know, the corner office, the company car. You can get all those without actually getting that title of managing director.
To make yourself indispensable, but without having to be at the top spot.
That's crucial.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I don't think your aim in your mind should be to say, I want to be indispensable.
Okay.
Because, no one is indispensable, actually. Winston Churchill once said, the graveyard is full of indispensable men. You can go there and find them. Napoleon Bonaparte.
So what's the idea then?
It's not to make yourself independent.
But not indispensable.
No, it's actually to just do the best. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the next link, is that you need to just get better at doing what you're doing. And your employer needs to understand. I'm talking to both now, the employer and the employee. Now, I'll leave you with this one thought. We all need to find out where we are. There are 4 quadrants. We'll talk about them. But basically, they are divided between 2 variables. One is how easy do you find something and how interesting do you find it. So, quadrant number 1 are those things that you find not easy and not interesting. Is your job that way? Quadrant number 2, easy but not interesting. Is that what
not challenging in any way?
Quadrant number 3, interesting but not easy. And quadrant number 4, the magic quadrant, easy and interesting. And that's what we need to ask ourselves. How do you find it? Do you look forward to going to your job in the morning? How do you find out if this is really the job that you want to do? Career planning. The first thing you look at is you look back, you don't look forward. So look back to your high school days, look back to your college days, to your primary school days, and find out what subjects did I use to find easy and interesting. So you look at those 4 quadrants again and you plot all your subjects, okay? Math, physics, chemistry, English and so on and so forth. Which quadrants do they fall into? Okay, and the magic quadrant, which is those things you've always found easy and interesting. Okay, those subjects, you need to then look at the professions that revolve around those subjects, and that is where you can be most effective with minimum effort.
Right. Let me ask you though, very quickly. I know we spoke about it before. I mean, you can do that at the age of, say, 38 years old, and all of a sudden you realize, damn it, I'm in the wrong job. Can you change then?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
How do you pick up and go? It's a bit scary.
I mean, I don't know if I could all of a sudden realize that broadcasting was not my thing. I mean, I don't think that'll ever happen. But if it did, and just at this age go, all right, then I'll just do this now.
Yeah, you can do that. I mean, that's exactly what I did. Finished college with an engineering degree, and today this is what I do.
But
and I love it.
How about if the aspects of your job that just aren't satisfying? Like, I'll tell you, I love it, but waking up at 4 every morning, I would not miss that.
You need to do this stop analysis within your job. You need to look at your job and say, yes, there's aspects you don't like, but let's look at the overall. You calculate the waking up, what percentage of that is the job. And for you, I'm sure it's just 10%.
You're kidding? Try looking this good every morning.
But surely, I don't really mind getting up. That's not.
I guess when you're here, it's half the job done, really.
But there's lots of things around this 4 hours that we've mentioned before that I don't.
I have a friend who actually is up early, but he always goes to bed before 8:30. I know you guys don't adhere to that.
Nope, not at all.
That principle.
Don't even know what you're talking about.
You can't have your cake and eat it.
Too.
I usually head
out.
I
watch the news at 9, Zweli.
I usually go out about 8:30.